All right, good morning, happy Wednesday, let's get started. So hint, whenever you see a green space, you are to complete an activity. So in the last activity, you completed a first reading of the text, A Poem for My Librarian, Mrs. Long, and examine the relationship between the speaker and Mrs. Long, the librarian. In this activity, you'll do a second reading of the text and look more closely at the language the author uses to develop the theme. So you're going to review what you learned about the poem during the last activity, then answer the questions that examine how the author uses language to develop her overall meaning, and then review the work you completed over the last two activities and identify a theme. So as always, if you need translated directions, all you need to do is click the links and they pop right up. All right, so today you'll reread A Poem for My Librarian, Mrs. Long. You can find the text here. And just like yesterday, if you need the text read to you, you have your video here that you can use for the audio. So poets use literal and figurative language to develop the themes of their poems. When writers use literal language, they mean exactly what they say. In the poem, Giovanni writes that the speaker sat on the porch watching a sign turn on and off, and this is exactly what the speaker did. In figurative language, authors use figures of speech to go beyond the literal meanings of words. Examples of common figures of speech are similes, metaphors, and personification, all things that we should be very familiar with. Today we'll look more closely at Giovanni's use of literal and figurative language. So a few weeks back, we read a poem in which the author, Lucille Clifton, breaks a number of grammar rules. Our poet today does too. So which rules does Nikki Giovanni break in A Poem for My Librarian, Mrs. Long? So at this point, you should have already looked at the text, at least skimmed it, and you should have some idea as to what rules she breaks. So during the last activity, you answered 4 questions that helped you understand the interactions between the speaker and Mrs. Long. Let's review the purpose for reading you set yesterday and answer the questions below. Refer to your slides from day 2's activities if you need support. So you refer back to what you did yesterday and look at what you said in response to this question. On slides 6 and 7, you'll be asked to answer questions that look more closely at the language in the text. Read the question and answer it in the green space. So what is the author trying to say about life at the time? So what do people do for fun is the hint that they're giving you. That's not a hard question. So how do these lines capture the speaker's feelings about books? By the way, I'm on this second question. So they give you lines 19 through 20, 19 and 20, and then they ask how do they capture the speaker's feelings about books? So when Mrs. Long brought the books back from the library, the speaker said, "I held them to my chest, close to my heart." What do these words tell the reader about the speaker's relationship with books? So again, you're trying to build upon the overall idea as to how the speaker feels about books and what kind of relationship they have with books. Oops. In the last stanza of the poem, the speaker references the series The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and states that Mrs. Long opened that wardrobe. What did Mrs. Long open for the speaker? So again, we're talking about literal versus figurative. So what is the word open referring to specifically? So for a hint, refer to the footnote at the bottom of page 323 if you need more support. And then finally, each text has at least one theme. The theme of text is the overall message the author is trying to convey. Again, something we should be familiar with. After reading the full text twice and analyzing the language used and the relationships explored, you will now identify one theme of the text. Write a possible theme for the text below. Review your work from days 2 and 3 for extra support. So some sentence frames, meaning like sentence starters. The theme is the author wants to convey the message that blah, blah, blah. And then here is that additional help slide. Talks about literal and figurative language and the differences between the two. All right, that is it for today. Use the live questions doc, attendance check-in, please. And yeah, that's it. See you tomorrow.